I gave away the couch. Not because it was broken, not because it was old, but because it carried too many unspoken memories. It sat there, heavy with secrets, like a silent witness to years I could never reclaim. At first, it felt like betrayal, as if parting with it meant erasing a chapter that still burned in my veins. I thought I'd feel regret. I thought I'd feel empty. Instead, something shifted. When the couch left, I noticed the space it left behind, bare, raw, almost aching with possibility. And in that empty space, I felt something stir inside me. A freedom I hadn't tasted in years. You see, sometimes we clutch onto objects because they anchor us to stories we're too afraid to release. We wrap ourselves in fabric and wood, thinking it will keep us safe. But in truth, it chains us. By letting go of what I thought I needed, I stumbled into what I was truly craving. Not the comfort of an old seat, but the permission to rewrite my own story. I didn't give away a couch. I gave away a weight. And in return, I got something I never expected. Space for myself, for my desires, for the life that had been waiting for me all along. So let me whisper this truth to you. Sometimes the thing you're afraid to release is the very thing keeping you from breathing freely. What will you give away so you can finally receive? Every object in our lives is more than wood, fabric, or steel. It becomes a vessel, a container for the weight of our emotions, the echoes of conversations, the laughter that once filled the room, and the silence that sometimes cut sharper than any words. We don't notice it at first. We buy a piece of furniture, a picture frame, a lamp, and we think it's only there to serve a function. But with time, with the slow accumulation of moments, both tender and turbulent, those objects begin to hold more than we ever realize. They become silent witnesses, carrying our stories even when we no longer speak them aloud. That's the dangerous part they never forget. While we may try to push certain memories into the shadows, the objects around us keep them alive, humming beneath the surface like a faint song we cannot turn off. The chair in the corner might remember the arguments you wish you could erase. The clock on the wall may still echo with the waiting, the anticipation of someone who never walked through the door. Even a simple cushion can cradle the memory of a body that once leaned against it, leaving an imprint that doesn't fade. And we, without even knowing it, keep touching those ghosts. We sit, we glance, we brush past the fabric, and suddenly, we are thrown back into a moment we didn't choose to revisit. Objects do not speak, yet they tell stories. They whisper them to us in silence, pressing reminders into our skin. Sometimes the story is soft, comforting, wrapping us in a memory we cherish. But other times, the story weighs like stone. It keeps us tethered to a past we've already outgrown, trapping us in a room where the air never fully clears. This is why letting go feels so much bigger than simply discarding a thing. It isn't about fabric or wood. It's about loosening the grip of a story we no longer need to live inside of. It's about recognizing that we have been carrying entire chapters inside these silent witnesses, giving them the power to dictate how we feel each time we see them. When we allow an object to remain, we unknowingly allow its story to remain too. And here's the secret most of us don't admit. Sometimes we don't want to let go because the story, as painful as it may be, is familiar. It gives us a sense of belonging to something that once was. It becomes a shrine to a version of ourselves we no longer are. Yet we keep bowing to it, day after day. That's why the objects feel heavier than their physical weight. They are loaded with emotion, with memory, with the desire to both remember and forget all at once. Objects carry silent stories, and until we decide to release them, they keep us speaking in a language of the past. letting go has a way of clawing at the heart. Because it never feels like a simple choice. It feels like an act of treason. Against something that once held us together. Something that defined us in ways we didn't even realize. The moment you decide to release, there is an invisible voice that rises within you, accusing you of disloyalty. It whispers, "How dare you move on? How dare you let this go?" And suddenly, the act of cleaning, discarding, or giving away is no longer practical. It is emotional warfare. The strange part is, we often confuse the object with the memory, the person, or the chapter it represents. And so, when we let go of the thing, it feels as if we are letting go of them, too. That's why betrayal becomes the first sensation. Our minds twist the act of release into abandonment. Even if the relationship is gone, even if the chapter has ended, our hands tremble when we try to untether ourselves. It feels like disrespecting the past. Like erasing something that once mattered deeply. The guilt lingers as if the past is watching, waiting to see what we will do. In the very moment of letting go, regret often rushes in. It doesn't matter that the thing is outdated, or that it has been sitting unused for years. The act of parting with it creates a surge of panic, as though we have made a mistake too permanent to undo. The mind tries to negotiate, whispering reasons to hold on, promising that maybe one day we'll need it. Maybe one day it will matter again. It is rarely about the object itself. It is about the story we have woven around it. A story we fear will vanish if we loosen our grip. But beneath that sense of betrayal lies an even deeper truth. We are not betraying the memory. We are betraying the illusion that we must keep carrying it. It is the illusion that keeping the object will keep us whole, when in fact it often keeps us fragmented. The heaviness of betrayal is not a punishment, but a threshold. It is the body and the soul recognizing the gravity of release, warning us that once we cross this line, things will change. And change, even when necessary, is rarely comfortable. It scrapes against the parts of us that want certainty, that cling to routine, that crave the safety of the familiar. Letting go shakes us awake. It rips the covers off of emotions we have kept hidden. That's why it feels disloyal. Because we are stepping away from a version of ourselves that was built around holding on. The betrayal is not real. It is the echo of attachment protesting its end. And still, it comes first, fierce and overwhelming. Before freedom ever has a chance to arrive. When something leaves your life, an object, a relationship, even a belief, it almost always leaves behind an emptiness that feels unbearable at first. We are trained to believe that emptiness is a sign of loss, that bare spaces must be quickly filled, that silence is a void demanding noise. So when a couch disappears, when a photograph is taken down, when the shelf suddenly stands exposed, there is a moment of panic. The mind scrambles to cover the absence, to put something, anything, in its place. Yet if we resist that urge, if we allow the space to remain untouched for just a little while, something remarkable begins to happen. The space starts to breathe. It opens like a wound at first, raw and unfamiliar. But slowly it transforms into a doorway. Without the object standing there, without the memory pressing down like weight, the room feels lighter, different, alive with possibility. The emptiness becomes a canvas. Quiet, unassuming, waiting. It whispers. Not in words but in sensation. Here, something new can live. Here, something different can grow. This is the secret most of us overlook. Space is not absence. It is invitation. When we hold on too tightly to what was, we crowd out what could be. The old furniture, the faded photograph, the clutter of things we no longer truly need. Each of them claims territory in our homes and in our hearts. They take up energy, demanding we carry their stories, even when we're no longer meant to. By releasing them, we do not simply clear the room, we clear ourselves. And in the clearing, the future finally has somewhere to land. Possibility is not loud. It does not announce itself with trumpets or force itself into our lives. It slips in quietly. Through cracks we once ignored, through the spaces that used to be blocked by all we refused to let go of. Sometimes it shows up as a new idea. Sometimes as an unexpected opportunity. Sometimes as a deep exhale we didn't know we needed. But it cannot arrive until there is space for it. When the couch left, it felt like something vital had been ripped away. The room looked hollow, exposed. Yet in that hollowness, there was also clarity. I could see the walls again. I could see the light shifting differently across the floor. I could feel myself stretching into the openness, my body recognizing what my mind had not yet grasped. That space is a gift. It gives us room to dream, room to imagine a life not bound by the stories of what once was. Possibility hides in the emptiness we are so quick to resist. It lives in the quiet corners, waiting for us to stop fearing the absence long enough to discover the freedom inside it. What feels like loss in the moment is often the first breath of something waiting to be born. We like to tell ourselves that we hold on to things because they mean something, because they are precious, because they matter. But beneath that explanation, there is almost always a quieter, more uncomfortable truth. We cling because we are afraid. Afraid of forgetting, afraid of changing, afraid of stepping into a future where we no longer have the anchor of what once was. The object, the photograph, the letter tucked away in a drawer, becomes more than itself. It becomes a shield against the unknown, a safety net woven out of familiarity. Clinging feels safe, but it is really just fear dressed in softer clothes. Fear whispers that if we let go, we will lose a part of ourselves. It warns that without these reminders, without these markers of who we once were, we will vanish into something unrecognizable. And so we wrap our arms tighter around things we no longer truly want, convincing ourselves that the comfort is worth the wait. What we don't see is that every object we refuse to release carries a thread that keeps us tied to a version of our life that no longer exists. Fear hides inside the stories we tell ourselves about why we can't let go. I might need it one day. It would be wasteful to throw it away. It reminds me of who I used to be. Each of these phrases sounds logical, almost responsible. But beneath them is the simple, trembling truth. We are afraid of who we will be without it. We are afraid of emptiness. We are afraid of possibility, because possibility requires change. And change asks us to step into the unknown without guarantees. Objects become walls we build around ourselves. Walls decorated with memories and meaning. We tell ourselves we're preserving something sacred. But often, we are simply protecting ourselves from facing the raw, unshaped space of what could be. To cling is to choose fear over freedom. It is to believe that what is familiar, even if it hurts, is safer than stepping into a life we have yet to imagine. The disguise is convincing. We tell ourselves we're sentimental, that we're simply honoring the past. And yes, sometimes that is true. But there is a fine line between honoring and hiding. When we cling, the past becomes a shield we hold in front of us, blocking the view of the horizon. We can't see what waits ahead because we are too busy defending the ground we've already walked. Fear makes us mistake survival for living. It convinces us that the comfort of holding on is better than the risk of letting go. But clinging does not keep us safe. It only keeps us small. And until we see through the disguise, until we name the fear for what it is, we remain trapped by the very things we once thought were protecting us. We spend so much of our lives believing that what we have defines us. We measure our worth by what we can hold on to. Possessions, relationships, achievements, even pain. The idea of letting go feels like loss. Like surrendering a piece of ourselves that we will never get back. And yet, what we fail to recognize is that the real treasure rarely comes from keeping. It comes from releasing. It is in the act of loosening our grip that we make space for something greater than what we thought we needed. The paradox is simple. When we hold too tightly, we suffocate the very life we want to protect. The memories, the comfort, the identity we're afraid to lose, they begin to cage us instead of nurture us. And in that cage, we shrink. But the moment we open our hands, even if it feels terrifying, even if it feels like we're betraying a part of ourselves, we create the conditions for growth. The gain doesn't come in the object itself. The gain comes in the expansion that follows its absence. Release is not just about discarding what is broken. Often, it's about letting go of what still appears intact, but no longer serves us. That's what makes it difficult. It's easy to throw away what is clearly useless. It's much harder to release what still holds traces of meaning, what still tempts us with the illusion of comfort. But when we dare to let it go, we often discover that what we clung to was never the source of our strength. It was only a placeholder, a weight disguised as support. The moment of release feels like emptiness, but that emptiness is fertile ground. It is where possibility takes root, where the unexpected can enter, where the self we've been hiding from can finally stretch and breathe. What we gain is not just freedom from clutter, but freedom from the stories that kept us bound. We gain clarity. We gain lightness. We gain the realization that we do not need to drag yesterday's anchors into tomorrow's seas. There is a richness in letting go that cannot be measured in what we hold in our hands. It's measured in what we feel in our hearts after the weight has lifted. It's measured in the room we suddenly have for joy, for creativity, for peace. The true gain is not tangible, it is internal, invisible, but undeniable. It shows up in the way we breathe easier, in the way the silence feels softer, in the way our lives open toward directions we never imagined possible. Release teaches us that holding on does not make us whole. What makes us whole is the courage to trust that by letting go, we are not losing. We are receiving. We are making way for a deeper form of abundance. One that could never reach us, while our hands were still full of what we thought we couldn't live without. Freedom is a word we often chase, yet rarely understand. We imagine it as the ability to do whatever we want, whenever we want. We picture it as open skies, unlocked doors, endless choices. But the truth is, freedom does not come from adding more to our lives. It comes from releasing what no longer belongs. To be free, we must first surrender. We must unclench our fists and let go of the things that bind us, even when they are the very things we've convinced ourselves we can't live without. Surrender is not weakness, though it can feel that way. It feels like defeat, like giving up control, like admitting we no longer have power over what we're holding. But in reality, surrender is the most powerful act of all, because it takes courage to stop fighting battles that only drain us. It takes strength to stop carrying weights that were never meant to be ours forever. The chains we drag are rarely locked by anyone else. Most of the time, we are the ones who keep fastening them tighter. When we surrender, we begin to see how much of our so-called freedom was only an illusion. The objects, the relationships, the old stories, we tell ourselves they keep us safe, but they often keep us small. They give us comfort, yes. But comfort is not the same as freedom. Comfort is the padded cell of familiarity, soft enough to keep us from hurting, but firm enough to keep us from leaving. To surrender is to step beyond the walls of that cell and risk the unknown. And yet, the unknown is where freedom lives. It's the unmarked path, the bare room, the quiet moment when we are no longer defined by what we cling to. Surrender cracks us open, and in that opening, light pours in. The world begins to expand around us, no longer confined to the narrow corridors of yesterday's attachments. What once felt terrifying, the release, the emptiness, slowly reveals itself as liberation. True freedom asks for sacrifice. It asks us to let go of the identities that no longer fit, the possessions that no longer serve, the expectations that no longer inspire. It asks us to stop gripping so tightly to control, to outcomes, to appearances. And in exchange, it offers us space. Space to move. Space to grow. Space to breathe without apology. The surrender that once felt like loss begins to feel like the truest form of gain. To surrender is to trust that life will meet us where we are, that we do not need to drag the past into the future in order to be whole. It is a faith-filled act, a declaration that freedom is worth the discomfort of release. Only by surrendering can we stop surviving under the weight of what was, and step fully into the vast, unshackled expanse of what could be. And so, what began as a simple act of giving away a couch became something far deeper. A lesson about release, about space, about freedom. It taught me that objects are never just objects, that our attachments are rarely about the thing itself, and that what feels like loss is often the first breath of something new. When I let go, I thought I was saying goodbye to comfort. Instead, I was saying hello to possibility. I was making room for desires I had buried, for a life I had not yet dared to imagine. The weight I feared losing was the very weight that had been holding me down. If there is one truth I leave with you today, it is this: the moment you surrender what no longer serves you, you open the door to everything you've been secretly waiting for. Freedom does not come from holding tighter. It comes from trusting enough to let go. Thank you for listening, for holding this story with me, and for allowing my voice to meet you in your own quiet spaces of longing. My hope is that something in these words lingers with you long after this moment is gone. Until we meet again, take care. Release what no longer belongs, and step boldly into the life that is waiting for you. Goodbye, and thank you.